Seattle, and on behalf of our staff here and our friends at Third Place Books, it's a pleasure to welcome you to tonight's presentation of Laura Shin in conversation with Steve Scher. As we get underway, I want to acknowledge that our institution stands on the unceded traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, particularly the Duwamish. We thank them for our continuing use of the natural resources of their ancestral homeland. And we're very glad that you're joining us tonight, whether it's here in the room live or, well, also live, but in a different room, your own room at home somewhere. Either way, we're grateful to you for being a part of the program. The presentation will run around 60 minutes, including Q&A. Your Qs are very important to the A's from the stage, so you will want to use the URL meet.ps/shin, S-H-I-N, or scan the QR code that's on, there we go, scan the QR code that's on screen, or it should be on your screen at home too if you're watching, like I said, at home. We'll drop the link in the chat too so that you can submit your question at any time. Submit early whenever you feel like it. That way we'll have a nice segue into the audience Q&A portion, and we'll try to go to as many as possible. Also, as a little reminder, if you want to view the program using closed captions, click the CC button in the bottom right corner of the video player. Town Hall's adding new events and podcasts all the time. Tomorrow night, Town Hall regular Tom Hartman joins to discuss the latest in his Hidden History series, this one on the rise of big data, a sentence that really wants a modifier, I think, like irresistible or terrifying or something. Anyway, also upcoming an event with journalist Monica Guzman talking to David Horsey about staying curious in tribal times. Visit our website to join our email list and get the latest updates as programs are being added, like I said, all the time. Town Hall's work is made possible through your support and the support of many sponsors. Our Civics series is supported by the Real Networks Foundation and the True Brown Foundation. But as you've heard me say many times, if you've come to other Town Hall programs, we are at heart a member-supported organization. And I want to thank all of our members watching tonight in the room or at home. If you share their vision, Town Hall's vision of a community strengthened by conversations around civics, science, our culture, please consider joining us by becoming a member too. One last point, you will certainly want to go deeper into tonight's complex and fascinating topic by purchasing your own copy of Laura Shin's book. If you're here in the room tonight, you're in luck, because there's a big table right over there with lots of copies from Third Place Books in our auto bar. If you're at home, you're in luck too, because there's a URL on your screen that will take you directly to the virtual version of Third Place Books, and you can buy your copy from them the new-fashioned way. And with all that, journalist Laura Shin has been a leading chronicler of cryptocurrency and blockchain since 2015, formerly a senior editor at Forbes. After initial curiosity about the topic, she fell down the crypto rabbit hole, as her official bio says, absorbing everything she could about Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all the rest, becoming the first mainstream reporter to cover crypto assets full-time. Her role as crypto chronicler led her to host and produce the popular podcast Unchained, where she interviews the top minds from the crypto world. Laura is known for tough questions and for her ability to distill complicated topics around this often opaque around this often opaque topic into an unbiased, accessible narrative. Steve Scher, meanwhile, is a podcaster and an interviewer. He's taught at the University of Washington since 2009, and before that, he was the central voice in Seattle's public radio scene for almost 30 years. More recently, he's been co-host and/or senior correspondent for Town Hall Seattle's In the Moment podcast since its inception. Laura Shin's book, The Cryptonians, Idealism, Greed, Lies, and the Making of the First Big Cryptocurrency Craze, is the subject of the discussion tonight. Please join me in welcoming Steve Scher and Laura Shin.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you very much. Here, out there, in's here. Stephen Colbert always says. Why did you go down the crypto rabbit hole anyways?
Well, that's a good question. I guess, so I was covering personal finance, and I was getting a little bit tired because it's a beat that doesn't change a lot. And my Forbes editor said that they had an idea to do a Forbes FinTech 50 list, and they asked if I would head that up with another reporter. So she and I divided the list into categories, and I took the category of digital currency. And one of my first interviews where somebody explained Bitcoin to me, it just was very clear in that interview that Bitcoin was just going to change a lot of things. I guess I became very aware because since I was doing all these interviews for the fintech list, like these fintech startups were telling me what the problems were with the banking system. And so when you learn about Bitcoin and you also know how the current financial system works, it's just very, very, very clear that it's very revolutionary. And so I think that's why I fell down the rabbit hole, but also because it's so complex. It's like, there's just the network aspect, there's the asset aspect, there's, the technology, there's like the monetary policy, there's just kind of like so many things that you could learn about. And then, as people know, the space expanded beyond Bitcoin into other things. And so, yeah, I think currently I just still feel like I can't keep up, which is something that I love about covering the space.
What's happening that you can't keep up with? I know it's moving fast, but
Oh my God, there's so many things.
well, like I saw that some people had asked you about what impact crypto has on the war in Russia and the Ukraine. Are you seeing some aspects already?
Oh yeah, who would have thought that a country that was being invaded would crowdsource or crowdfund funds to, buy like bulletproof vests and tourniquets and, just other equipment that it's using in this battle. I heard the latest figure that they crowdfunded is $100 million worth of crypto. They literally tweeted a Bitcoin address, an Ether address, a Tether address, and then later a DOT address, which that's even weirder. But that's just unprecedented. Frankly, it's just incredible. And, I heard someone saying that I guess I forget what platform it was. Was it a GoFundMe or I forget. There was some platform where I think people were trying to raise funds, but it was shut down for some reason that I don't recall. I've been traveling a lot, so I'm not a 100% up on all the news. Just a lot of things going on right now. But they were saying that this was the first time where a government could just kind of solicit funds directly, and it's like cash, right? And so there was no kind of other platform where there were rules around this or that, and so. They posted the addresses and people sent money, and that's basically it.
Russia's entwined, there are Russians entwined in the crypto economy, yes. Is there any implications for, I know I'm asking you to go a little far afield, but are there implications for what Russia could or couldn't encounter with the way people are using crypto to fight the war, to wage the war, to undermine efforts? There must be many ways that people are engaged.
So are you asking if they would use crypto to evade sanctions?
Could Russia use crypto to evade sanctions? Much better question. That's why you're such a good job.
Yeah, so I think most of the people that kind of are seriously looking at this kind of thing just don't feel that that's really possible because the crypto markets are just too small. Apparently Russia has amassed $630 billion worth of currency reserves, and the crypto markets aren't that much bigger than that, and also it's all public ledgers, and so if they were to try to use crypto to launder the money, it would be extremely visible, and it would definitely move the markets, and it just would be so obvious. So I don't think any of the administration officials are very worried about that. I think that's kind of a narrative that maybe people who aren't very close to the matter have run with just because it sounds like a scary thing, but it's not actually something that probably is likely to happen.
Well, that's part of the power of it, right? The promise of it, right? That it's open, that people can see what's happening, that it's transparent. That's the idealism, I guess, part of this rabbit hole.
Yeah. Although, I will say, these early blockchains are public, but there's definitely certain privacy coins that have been attempted. And my personal thought is that someday a lot of these chains might be private by default. I do know of one right now that I think is really interesting. It's a smart contract platform, and it is private by default. And it just makes sense to me. Most of us, I think, would rather have our financial transactions be private and not public. You know, and I personally don't think that just because you want your transactions to be private, that it means you're doing something illicit. But, you know, at the moment, yes, like the vast majority of transactions are on these public ledgers, so.
Does it mean you're undermining the other aspect of crypto, that it's supposed to spread a democratic, pluralistic effort?
Wait, what would undermine that?
If there's everything's private, if these things are private, if these coins are private, chains are private.
No, I don't know. Wait, why would that undermine the democratic aspect? I don't understand.
Well, see, isn't the idea that it's idealistic, it's democratic, people can come together and know what is happening transparently? So if the fact that the coins are private wouldn't affect that? Or those currencies are private, wouldn't affect that?
I'm not sure. I guess so at least so all of the privacy coins work differently, but one of them in particular that I'm a little bit more familiar with, it's what is the expression that they use? It's something like you know, basically discretionary disclosure or something. It's something like that. I'm not sure if that's the exact term, but they have what are called viewing keys. And so if you choose to, for this particular coin that I'm talking about, it's called Zcash. If you choose to go with a private transaction, then, or what they call a shielded transaction, then you can, you know, just choose who you're going to reveal that data to. And so you have what's called a viewing key, and then you say, maybe I only want the IRS to see this transaction, or, you know, whatever it might be, or my auditor, or, you know, my bookkeeper. And then so you can kind of like reveal it to just who needs to know and not to the whole world. So, you know, some of them are like that. Yeah, I'm not sure how they would necessarily make things democratic. I just do think, though, that probably after a while it might be that more people would prefer to have their transactions be private. Although I'm one of those people where I go on Venmo and I'm like, why would you want the world to know that you paid your friend $20 for pizza? You know, maybe because I'm a little bit older than the normal Venmo crowd, but so I don't know. This is my opinion.
Yeah, that is unfathomable to me too. Especially since it's open to everybody when you're on those platforms. It's like, oh, I haven't heard from this person in 15 years, and they did just that. They gave somebody money for pizza.
Yes. I'm really not interested in the transaction of people that I like barely know. But you know what? I open the app and I see what they're doing. So,
the Cryptopians, a word you coined.
My editor coined, but I think what we wanted to do with the title is make it clear that this was about people. And what I really like about the title is, for those of you who've read the book, well, actually, can you raise your hand if you actually have read the book so far? Okay, so just not that many. Well, when you read it, you'll realize, you know, it's unclear whether we mean utopian or dystopian, and I feel like that's a very good title for the book. You know, because yeah, it really could go either way.
Do you have a sense where we are right now? Are we in that middle ground yet? It could still go either way. Do you see things going one way or the other?
I mean, I think it'll be like that forever, where, you know, it's like anything in life, there's good and bad.
Well, who are the idealists that you encountered in writing this book? Who are the people that you felt were the idealists? So the subtitle is Idealism, Greed, Lies, in the making of the first big crypto craze. So who are the idealists that you, and I imagine, are some of the idealists also the people who are falling under the area of greed and lies, or are there pretty clear distinctions?
Yeah, no, I would say it's different people. So I don't want to give too much of my opinion about who falls in which category, frankly, actually.
I was telling you that when I read the book, you were very careful about that.
Yeah, I try not to give too much of my opinion. And actually, for people who listen to my show, you'll know I have said this before. I actually surprisingly have very few opinions about crypto, which I don't know. People maybe might find that surprising. I'm not sure, but I think it's just because just as a journalist, I want to like get the story right. And so I don't want to be too fixed in my ideas. And then if like the story goes a different way than what I thought, like I might miss it. So I want to like be open to whatever might happen. So even now, there are certain things where I think, oh, what's most likely going to happen is X. But I do not let myself get attached to that idea, because like if it's Y, like I need to be ready to cover it. And I don't want to like, be too wedded to this idea that it should happen this other way.
Okay, I'll ask it a different way. What are the idealistic issues that you saw emerging in writing about this book?
Well, one of them for sure is, and Vitalik Buterin probably is the main kind of like idealist in the book. I mean, he's the main character, and a lot of people that have read it and definitely were, kind of surprised by all the crazy things that happen in the book. They definitely said, okay, well, you know what? At least Vitalik comes off looking good. And I think the thing about him, though, is that, so he had these idealistic views on like how to develop Ethereum and like how crypto in general should help people and
Lay those out a little bit. What are those idealistic views?
So one that happens kind of early on is that the developers talk about how they're not big fans of the current business model in tech, which is that there's like a giant corporation and they take people's data and then they sell ads against it or basically monetize people's information. And so there's kind of a conflict early on where, this is just like a theme actually, where you've got the business guys and then the devs, the developers. And the business guys, they're kind of into that idea of like having a big company and it takes people's data and then it profits off of that. And then the developers want to, but also that would mean keeping the tech closed source. And the developers are very much on the side of like doing things open source and having things be decentralized the way Bitcoin is, meaning not having a company and not taking people's data and instead having like this technology that you build for the people. And that's really something that Vitalik was like, really pushing for. The thing is, though, because he's that kind of person that seeks consensus and he wants everybody to kind of agree on the path forward, and because some of the people in the group were sort of like greedier and more self-interested, there's kind of a long, drawn-out process in the beginning where, they probably, frankly, debated over that longer than they would have if he'd had a more forceful personality. But in general, his sort of inability to assert himself becomes a problem throughout the whole book.
Well, he's a kid when this all starts. How old is he?
He was 19.
Yeah. So he had some crazy insights, but he was still a young person.
Exactly. Like one thing that I didn't realize when I started the book, but I definitely feel was the case by the time I finished, was that the book ended up being a coming-of-age story for Vitalik, which I sort of didn't know when I went to report it. But like I found that when I was narrating the audiobook, the last bit of it just is about, how he's changed and grown. And I found myself like tearing up and like crying when I was narrating it. So we had to kind of start and stop a few times because I was like choking up a little bit. But, that's how I felt. Like he just, started, like I said, when he was a teenager, he really didn't know what he was doing. And by the end, you see, like, he's had this trajectory, he's grown, and, was he, like, perfect by the end? No, he wasn't, but he'd really come a long way.
Did he have people that you felt were positive influence on him that helped him go down that road? Entirely positive influences, I should say?
Oh, boy. Wow. The sad thing is I can't really think of anybody off the top of my head.
He had plenty of people who influenced him or pulled him one way or the other.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think there were certain people that were very well-intentioned, but he didn't trust them. So they were kind of like moved to the side. And then he trusted other people that definitely were not well-intentioned, and that kind of dragged on pretty long. But one other thing was that, like, I think because he kind of started to realize that like maybe he wasn't always the best judge of character and couldn't tell when people were, basically exploiting him. I think he then began to just sort of surround himself by trusted people. But then those people, I think, frankly, people outside of that inner circle distrust those people because they're like the gatekeepers. And the whole thing is very fascinating. You'll read at the end.
They're the what? They're the what? You said the people.
They're the gatekeepers. Like that's
the gatekeepers.
So I don't want to give too many spoilers because I know you haven't all read it, but at the end you'll read about this shadow government that people complain about. So that's kind of, yeah.
Not being the open sourced idealistic community
Yeah,
that they thought they were engaged in, where everybody could vote to have an impact on where the money was spent.
Exactly. It's these people, they don't have official roles, but they're kind of like the people that, at least, so my book ends at the beginning of 2018, so I don't want to say exactly what's going on right now because I didn't really report all that, but definitely in that period, he was relying on these like unofficial people, and people were like kind of scared of them and definitely complained a lot about how much power they had, even though they didn't have official titles. So.
All right, so you don't want to give opinions, so how do I ask this question? How did the greed manifest itself?
Oh, wow, there's plenty of incidents of people.
Well, name a few. If you don't want to name their names, I don't know how you're going about it. Since greed is not something we necessarily, approve of. But what were the incidents that you saw reported on?
There are some instances. Wow, there's so many really that I could cite. So there's some different legal threats that people make trying to get money that probably wasn't really owed to them, but they were trying to pretend like it was owed to them. That happened more than once. There was a moment where somebody tried to kind of like shake down this other person. There was a moment where people proposed market manipulation to try to profit. I mean, there's like so much greed, so much. This is barely scratching the surface, but I don't want to spoil too much.
Okay. I may let you get away with that. I may not. There's a few people who I don't understand their where they come down, and I'm not quite sure. I have my cheat sheet. Joe Lubin.
Yeah.
Consensus. What is consensus? What is that business? What does it do?
So Consensus is one of the few for-profit businesses building on Ethereum, and it's so funny because this question that you're raising is something that his employees used to talk about all the time because they would be so confused. He did not seem to care at all if Consensus made any money, and instead it burned through like just, tens of millions of dollars every year.
In paying salaries, in renting office space, in renting houses, and taking people to conventions.
Yes, and in acquiring an asteroid mining company because they were going to take blockchain to space. So things like that too. And people would be like, why does he not care about whether or not Consensus makes money? I mean, he was hiring tons and tons of people. But it was like very unorganized. There was no hierarchy, and so people were just hiring people willy-nilly for no reason. And so that's why they like went through many rounds of layoffs eventually when the bubble burst. But yeah, things were just sort of wild. And so the employees had all these theories about like what was the reason for Consensus if he didn't seem to care about making money. And I put forward the kind of main theory that multiple people discussed with me. I don't know if it's true. I ran it by Joe, and I'm pretty sure he gave some kind of response, which I don't remember.
The theory was that he was escaping taxes and he was making money by not making money because of what happens with the coins that he held. I can't remember what the final thing was.
So one of his. Well, so I can't remember if I said which source. I won't say who said this to me, but let's say somebody high up at Consensus said, "Oh, well, if Joe, because Joe's like one of the biggest holders of Ether, or at least most people think that, And so they were saying things like, oh, okay, so if he has, X number of Ether, if he spends like 1/5 of it to make the other 80% worth more, then like maybe that's the purpose of consensus. So that was like another theory.
How does he do that? Make it worth more by spending that 1/5?
Oh, because consensus was kind of, just like building things on top of Ethereum, and the thought was that they would generate applications that would then generate demand for Ether. I don't know if they necessarily did that, but at least they built good infrastructure tools that then enabled other applications to grow, but they weren't consensus-produced applications that have become popular. But yeah.
A fine threading of the needle there. The way, because I'm still not sure of his role in all this. But you have many sources, and some you quote, and some, as you write at the beginning of the book, are anonymous sources. And you also talk about illegal, legal, and illegal aspects of this industry.
Yes, which, by the way, that's like a totally made-up thing that crypto people, like one of the crypto people talked about. I don't think it's a thing.
Well, what they think they're doing is getting real close to the line of illegal, but not maybe getting the attention of people who would say
Pretty
you're
much
breaking the law.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money that just in these 2 years, a lot of money doesn't do it justice. And it seems like there are also, in this era, a lot of people who are willing to, I'll take back a lot. There seems to be a good number of people who are willing to cheat and steal and run scams.
Yep.
How come and they're all people that seem to have to know what they're doing in the world of coding and blockchain. How come?
Well, the way that I felt it happened was that kind of earlier in the book, you have like the more serious, technologically minded people, and then once people realize like, oh, there's money to be had here, then the scammers and the fishers and the more unscrupulous types come in. Multiple people talked about how there was a certain point in the summer of 2017 when suddenly it just felt like there were so many scammers. It just, like, things switched. It was, the first half of 2017, there were kind of like some serious initial coin offerings by like people who had been kind of more like serial entrepreneurs or like just at least serious entrepreneurs or like people who'd been in the blockchain space for a while. And then after that, it was like less serious people, like people who like really had not been in blockchain for very long. But also at the same time, all these scammers started coming in. And yeah, so there was a whole section I have in the book about just like all the different kinds of scam. There are just like so many.
Many coins that weren't really coins at all. Vapor.
Definitely.
How, before I start taking these questions, how are people able to steal money or take money or move money from one account to another? I know it's very complicated. So.
Oh, there's so many ways to do this. So at the time, a lot of the groups were on Slack, which like now it's on Discord, but at that time the platform was Slack. And so a lot of scammers would just, join all these different Slack communities, and they would, like, you can make your profile name anything that you want on Slack. So they would just make their profile name the name of like the founder of the coin, and then be like, oh, like, security upgrade, like make sure you secure your coins by clicking on this link, or it'd be like, last minute sale of tokens, like get them now, like it kind of taking advantage of like exploiting FOMO or like people's sense of security.
Exploiting what?
FOMO, like fear of missing out. Like this is your last chance to get in at like this price kind of thing. Or there were things like they would buy the Google AdWord for, like there was a popular wallet, blockchain.com, or like another one, My Ether wallet, and then they would buy the Google AdWord, and instead of course, it being the real website, the top result, which would be this ad, would be the Fisher's website. And so then when you go there, when you enter your password, you're giving the hacker the password to get into your crypto wallet and just take all your coins. I mean, there were so many different scams.
Wasn't there one of the really knowledgeable fellows, I think he's European, who ended up having his phone number stolen, and then that became a way for them to get at his assets?
So that was Taylor. And so actually this has happened to me too. It's happened to a bunch of people. But like, I actually wrote about this in 2016. So what they do is the hacker will, let's say they'll call up Sprint, and let's say your phone number is at T-Mobile. They'll say to Sprint, oh, hi, I'm, Laura. So I'm the victim. So they'll pretend that they're me. And they'll say, I want to move my phone number from T-Mobile to Sprint. And so then Sprint will suddenly have all of my texts and phone calls going to the hacker's phone. And the hacker will then go to, my email and my bank account and just everything. And then they'll try to log in and click forgot password. And then the code will be sent to their phone. And then they'll change my password and lock me out of everything. And there are people who have been victims of this where they say they were locked out of like 30 some accounts within 7 minutes. Because it's like teams of people, they just do this. Because normally it's supposed to be what's called two-factor authentication, where it's like your password and the code. But then if you do forgot password, it's only one factor. So, and as long as they have your phone number, then they can change it. So that actually still goes on. And I also had my phone number stolen, but because I have secured all my accounts, they didn't get into anything.
So it's nothing to do with crypto. It's just the way the
web
works.
No, it does. And the reason that they target crypto people is because if they can get into your crypto accounts and they move the money out, since it's like cash, the crypto exchange can't like reverse the transaction for you. It's not like calling up your bank and asking for a chargeback. Like if they move the money out of your account, it's gone. It's just, like if you lose cash, basically. The thief, if somebody steals cash from you, you're not going to get it back unless the thief decides to send it back to you. And it's the same with crypto.
All right, I'm going to do a reset with these questions because we jumped right into it.
Okay.
What is crypto? Are you buying with the dollar? And then what does crypto do with what you bought? Let's go back to basics for a moment.
So you can buy crypto with dollars. And what was the second part?
Then what does crypto do, or what happens with those coins you buy? Or those?
Well, I mean, you can do whatever you want with them. You can trade with them. You can buy things with them. You can borrow and lend them. You can buy NFTs with them. You can use them to buy governance tokens to participate in what are called DAOs, meaning decentralized autonomous organizations, where they're like little mini democracies, and like people put up proposals, and then you can vote on the different proposals. I mean, there's so many different things you can do with crypto.
All right, just like money. Not even just like money.
It's way more interesting than normal money. It's like much more programmable, and it's just very fascinating.
Money plus.
Yeah, pretty much.
What was Vitalik's and his creators? What was his major innovation with Ethereum?
So Vitalik actually started as a Bitcoiner. And he actually also started as a journalist. He wrote for a publication called Bitcoin Weekly, and then later Bitcoin Magazine. He eventually became an owner of Bitcoin Magazine. And
very clear writer, as you write.
Yeah,
he was somebody that people encouraged to keep writing because he was very clear in explaining what this was.
Yeah, and even now he's still a very good writer, I think. Although, definitely if you've ever read his blog, sometimes the mathematical stuff is like, whew. But so he was noticing, because he had done some college, but then he decided to travel the world and like visit all these different Bitcoin communities. And he was noticing that people were having these ideas for new blockchains, but the way they were building them was to add features onto the features that Bitcoin already had. And he was like, oh, well, if you go about it that way, then every time there's a new blockchain, it will make all the previous ones obsolete, because then it will have more features. So he was thinking, why can't it be more like the Apple App Store, where it's, just like anybody can think up any kind of application but make it decentralized the way Bitcoin is decentralized. And so he thought of a blockchain that would enable people to do that, it would be like a decentralized app store. And, you know, if you think about the Apple App Store, you've got like, you know, camera app, like photo apps and cooking apps and financial apps and productivity apps. And, you know what I mean? It's just like, there's a big variety. And so Ethereum is like that, but for decentralized applications where developers can think up any idea for any kind of decentralized application and upload it App Store style to Ethereum. And that's eventually what it became. And that's why, yeah, now we've got things on Ethereum like decentralized finance, but also NFTs and also decentralized autonomous organizations. And there's just like a big variety. There's, you know, like betting markets and, you know, it's like all kinds of things rather than, like I said, the way he saw people were kind of innovating was just to add single features. But instead, Ethereum is built around a language, and then people can use that programming language to create these decentralized applications.
I want to stick with the book a little bit. By the way, are you folks are sending us questions too? Okay, good.
Oh, I like your Got ETH shirt. That's really cool.
Got ETH, huh? What's layer 2 protocol? What's your favorite layer 2 protocol and why?
Oh, wow. My favorite layer 2. I don't know if I have a favorite layer 2, but okay, so whoever asked this is probably like a very technical person. I probably just would say that in general, I find ZK rollups like probably more interesting than optimistic rollups, just because I do think that like ultimately that's probably where things will go. I think like optimistic rollups will be sort of an interim step, but yeah, so maybe for that reason.
Can you define those? Tell us what those are.
Oh, so let's see if I can remember exactly the definition. So on optimistic rollup, probably it's a way of like batching transactions, basically. You see rollups in general, they're a way of batching transactions. And then you settle them on Ethereum as the base layer, and that is what enables. So layer 2 is like what they call a scaling solution, because right now, I forget what it is. Is it like 15 transactions a second on Ethereum? Does somebody? Yeah, something like that. So when you do the batching, then it can be, you know, like thousands. And with an optimistic rollup, basically, there's kind of more room for error. I forget. So yeah, don't quiz me on this right now. But basically, there's more room for error. But with like a ZK rollup, it's kind of just, there's less room for error, there's more finality. But yeah, it's more technically like just more computationally heavy. And so I think that's why like it's not probably gonna be the first layer 2 that really gets used, but ultimately it will probably trend in that direction.
Sorry, it just went away from me. Oh, okay, how about this one? Bitcoin or ETH, which one wins?
Oh, I just think they're not really directly competitive. To my mind, those are the only two that are like actually established. And I just think they have very different niches. And so to my mind, they just don't even directly compete. So I don't see like one taking the other out.
Your response to ETH is not decentralized. Case made persuasively by Mike Saylor on CNBC recently. I think the attendee is asking you to respond to that. ETH is not decentralized. Please respond.
I don't agree with that.
It is decentralized.
Yeah.
So I guess it wasn't that persuasive, whatever Mark Saylor said.
I mean, I think I totally understand.
Are they saying that because of what you said earlier about the shadow gatekeepers and things like that? What's the reason that it wouldn't be decentralized? What's the argument? Do you know?
Yeah, probably around just like the importance of Vitalik and the foundation. But for anybody who's in crypto, if you read the Electric Capital report that comes out every year with all the information on the developer communities, then you know that Ethereum far and away has the largest developer community, and at the moment it continues to attract 20% of all new developers to crypto, which is amazing. I mean, that's just incredible. You know, the size of the Ethereum ecosystem in terms of developers is just, I forget, it's like 4x the next biggest one or something. I forget. It's like way bigger than the next biggest one. So I just imagine, frankly, if like Vitalik and the foundation went away, all these developers that develop in Ethereum very regularly and are very invested in it, they will figure out another way to, do development on the clients and like transition to, it's not Ethereum 2.0 anymore, but what is it, the execution layer, whatever they're calling it. But anyway, so like I just feel like they'll figure out a way to organize, and because too many people are invested in it. So yeah, I just think, if the foundation went away, it would be fine and people would figure it out.
What do you see as the potential for DAOs? What are some of the challenges you see facing those communities in the future? So that's 2 questions. What are the potential for DAOs?
So DAOs are like probably one of my favorite things. DAOs, yeah, I mean, it's just like a brand new way to organize people, but in a really cool way. It's like I was saying before, you can have this group and they have kind of a mission, and then proposals go in front of the group, and then they can vote with their tokens or whatever it might be. And right now, there's like really big DAOs, there's kind of small DAOs, but like one new kind of DAO that I learned about, and it's very new, like I think they just launched a couple months ago, but it was so interesting, was they're called Web3 investment clubs. And it's a group of 99 people or less. And the reason for that is because if it's more than 99, then the SEC will regulate you. But what they have is like...
Illegal.
Yeah. So the investment club then will share like a crypto wallet, and let's say that someone in the group is like really in NFTs and they know that world really well, and then a different person knows like the DeFi world or decentralized finance world. Then each of the people with those areas of expertise will kind of lead investments in those areas, and then everybody will share in the gains. And so the group that created these Web3 investment clubs, it's like they just created software to make it very easy to form one of these. And they were saying that when they launched, they realized when they went to launch, like, the group that the cohort that we're launching with is half women-led DAOs or all women DAOs. And they didn't mean to do that. That, by the way, it's very rare in crypto to have half women. Very, 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 very rare. And so I asked them on my show, how did that happen? And they said, we didn't intend to do it. It's 2 men who founded this company where they developed these tools. And they said, we just were looking for groups that had like values alignment with this product we were creating. And when we went to launch, we just suddenly realized, it's half women. And I do think there is something about kind of the way DAOs are structured and the purpose of DAOs that it makes sense to me that it would appeal to women, because there's something very like collaborative and cooperative about that. And my personal feeling is like crypto won't really go mainstream until you get women involved in a big way. And so to find out that they were very interested in that, and frankly, when I interviewed a bunch of these women, they were like, "Come back to us in a few months because we've got even more stuff in the works." So I was just like, "Wow, I think this is gonna be a story." it just feels to me like, like I said, the kind of the values of DAOs sort of lines up with that, and so it's something I'm going to follow. But I'm very interested in DAOs.
So that's one of the challenges, get more women into these. What are some of the other challenges that might be facing
for
DAOs? Yeah.
Oh my God, just kind of the tooling for them definitely could be improved, although it's like way better than it was years ago. Because for people who read my book, you will find out in one of the first, it's really like the first big DAO, they definitely didn't have any of the tools necessary to actually run the DAO, and it created kind of a big debacle. But
how much money are we talking about?
Yeah.
How much money is still out there floating around somewhere?
So they initially raised $140 million, and then because the price of Ether grew very quickly after that, it eventually became a quarter of a billion dollars, and then it got hacked. 31% of it got stolen. So there just all kinds of crazy things happen with that.
And that money's out there somewhere. Some of that money is out there. So I know much of it was clawed back by the white hat groups.
Yeah,
but some of it's out there.
Yeah, so Ethereum did this hard fork that kind of like sort of erased the DAO. But because the
It's
original.
a complicated story. I know
It's
that's
a
why
very
you're-
complicated story. You
it's half
guys
your
need
book.
to read the book. Yes, yes.
But some of that money is still out there, right? Can't
Kind
be,
of.
doesn't seem to be able to be tapped.
It's in a form called Ethereum Classic. Yeah, not Ether anymore.
And the person who hacked it can't necessarily get to it because then he'd revealed himself?
No,
what-
he can get to it. It's just that everybody knows that that's the stolen money. So
That's what I mean. If he gets to it, he can't move it secretly. It's,
exactly, everybody knows, what money that is, and yeah, he would definitely probably be blocked if he tried to.
Yeah. Your
Yeah.
big reveal in your story and your reporting is that you name who that person was.
Yes, that was definitely the coolest thing about my book launch. I thought that we could reveal that we figured out who hacked this smart contract from 5.5 years ago. It was like a mystery that I think people just thought like it's never going to be resolved. So it was very cool that we came up with a very plausible suspect, and there's been no pushback. I think people recognize like, oh, the evidence is super strong.
Still, it's a lot of money. That's why it's so
Yes.
interesting.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
Because it grew.
if it had been Ether, still it would be like roughly $11 billion today, and because it's Ethereum Classic, it's still a lot of money. It's like $100 million.
Yeah.
But yeah, he can't really access it unless, I frankly don't know how he could actually use it without people realizing where that money came from. So.
One of the things I found so interesting is the infrastructure involved. For example, in this story, there are security teams, there are people that you trust that are doing this work all over the world to secure this system or to make it honest. Do you have a sense of how big that cohort is? How many companies, how many people?
Frankly, it's actually kind of small. There's like different forensics companies that do investigations. But even in that world, like, I think most people would say there's like only 2 companies really that are like kind of the leading companies in that area. And then for people who are in crypto, you will definitely know there are certain independent, or I don't know where one of them works, if he works anywhere, but there are certain people where they're sort of like these lone white hats that just go around and like constantly are saving money that would have otherwise been at risk. And then they like rescue it and then they announce it afterward, like, X amount of money could have been drained, but we saved it and da-da-da. And one of them, this guy, Sam's son, he's like a hero basically because he just does this all the time. You always find out after the fact he's sort of like this little white knight that just goes around and saves people's money.
Robin Hoods.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I'm going to combine 2 questions because they are important. What are your thoughts on the executive order that Biden signed today, quote, ensuing responsible development of digital assets, and in conjunction with that, how do you see the regulatory environment evolving in the U.S.?
So the executive order, I think most crypto people took pretty positively. There's nothing like very draconian about it. It just seems pretty reasonable to say like, the U.S. is going to kind of take a serious approach here and probably, just like have a priority and take like a considered approach across all government. One thing is, though, I did notice that one of the former regulators who now works for Andreessen Horowitz Crypto said that just if you do like a quick find in the document, you'll realize that, what were the words? I think like one of them might have been risk or something was like mentioned 47 times or, but then like innovation was only mentioned, like 7 times, or I forget the numbers and the exact words, but he pointed out that kind of it seemed that the regulators were more looking just at the negative potential for crypto, but not focusing as much on kind of the positive. So I think, some people had like minor criticisms, but by and large, I think a lot of people in crypto, really felt pretty positively about the executive order.
One of the things Biden said was the government should investigate whether it should have its own digital currency. Wasn't that right?
Yeah, they've been saying that for a while, I think. They've been kind of exploring.
What would that look like?
So So already there's China, which has issued its own central bank digital currency, they call it. I feel very confident that the US's would not look like China's because that's like a surveillance coin, and ours would not be like that.
It's a surveillance coin, did you say?
Basically. But yeah, I feel quite certain the US one would not be like that. But yeah, they're just exploring. I actually did one episode where one of the people who's been kind of like doing research into like what would that look like, if I remember correctly, like one of the first things he said was that, when we're looking at how we would build this architecture, one of the priorities we have is like trying to figure out how to ensure people's privacy. So, just the fact that that was right out of the gate, kind of like one of the priorities he mentioned right off the bat. Like I said, it just shows it's not going to be like a surveillance coin. So, not that they've decided to do one, but I'm just saying, like, even in this exploratory phase, that's like one of their top priorities. But I feel like there was a second part of your question. Oh, just how do I think regulation's going to go in the U.S.? Yeah. I don't know. It's definitely something I'm watching very carefully. For people who know my show, I'm kind of very.
Have you plugged it yet? Unchained.
Oh yeah. That's my podcast. And so for people who know my podcast, you will know that I'm definitely very interested in this question. Probably because, as an American and somebody who finds crypto interesting, and frankly, I probably do have the bias in the sense that I do think that there's probably a lot of good that could come out of this technology. And also, I guess, because I lived through the internet revolution, and I definitely feel like that benefited the US. And so it would be great if, for the crypto revolution, it also benefited the US. So a part of me, just is very interested in this story because basically what we've seen is that in the US in recent years, regulators have, first of all, not given the industry the clarity that they would like. But then on top of that, some of the noise that they've made has been kind of in the direction that the industry doesn't like. And so...
you mean like more control, more...
Exactly.
Comply with the Securities and Exchange Commission regulations?
Yeah. So, most assets in the world are what are called commodities. And so that's why the Commodities Futures Trading Commission in the U.S. Is just much bigger, and there's just more that it covers. And securities tend to be kind of like just a smaller group of assets, right? Because it's like stocks and bonds and things like that. And what was funny, or not funny, definitely not funny to crypto people, it's funny to me as a storyteller, is that when the Biden administration appointed their own SEC chair, it was somebody named Gary Gensler who used to teach blockchain and crypto at MIT, and so was very familiar with the technology, unlike the previous SEC chair who definitely kind of was less familiar with crypto, but also definitely more negative on crypto. And so I think people expected that Gary Gensler would be positive on crypto, but he has turned out to be the kind of person who thinks that most cryptos are securities, which is not what the industry wants. And so it's been just interesting to kind of watch this tension and how people are frustrated by that. But then another thing that's fascinating to me is, this is a midterm election year, and the Democrats have tended to be more vocal critics, while the Republicans have tended to be more vocal proponents. However, I definitely wouldn't say that this is a partisan issue because there are plenty of Democrats that are pro-crypto. And so I've been noticing that there's like a lot of younger Democratic candidates that are running on these pro-crypto platforms. And I wonder if they're gonna like raise more money because they're gonna get crypto people to send money in. But then it's like, well, will that matter for the races? Because their own constituents may not really care. And so it might be like, I don't remember which election year this was, but I remember, I'm sure it was probably during the Trump years or something where the liberals were like really upset about, all these things with Trump. And so they were sending money into these pivotal races in these other places, but then those candidates didn't necessarily win. They like raised a bunch of money from outsiders, but the actual people in those districts like still voted for whoever they wanted to vote for. And so anyway, I'm watching this because, I'm just curious to know, will crypto have any influence in the elections in terms of, first of all, will it help people? Will it help candidates fundraise, which I'm guessing it will. And second, then will that money actually change things, or will it not? I don't know.
And you've had a couple of shows, at least, talking to Democrats who, support crypto.
Yeah.
Would you just go a little bit deeper into like why is there any division at all, or disagreement at all between? I know I'm broadly saying Democrats or Republicans, but maybe why crypto people don't like the SEC or the SEC to see it as securities. What's their concern? What's their complaint?
So for the Democrats and Republicans question, most people probably know that crypto kind of has roots in libertarianism. So I think that's why maybe the Republicans tend to be more vocal in their support. But as you mentioned, there are a ton of Democrats that support crypto. And actually, there was a Democratic congressperson who, I can't remember what the actual statement was, but it was ahead of the executive order. And his name is Ron Wyden. And he, kind of just made some statement like, I will not support, I forget what it was, something draconian against crypto, basically, a draconian approach to regulating crypto. And I had Congressman Ro Khanna on my show recently. He's a very prominent Democrat, and he just came out with his book, and oh my gosh, he came on my show, and I was so impressed with how much knowledge he had about crypto, and he was just like talking about decentralization, and I mean, he just was into everything, and I was like, wow, like you really know this area. He's definitely a crypto nerd, so that was kind of fascinating to see. That's why I'm not saying it is a partisan issue. It's not. It's just that like the more vocal critics are people like Senator Elizabeth Warren, who's a very well-known Democrat, and then another Democrat named Congressman Brad Sherman, and maybe just because, they're like literally the most vocal critics in Congress, and they both happen to be Democrats. So there's sort of this perception a little bit that the Democrats tend to be more negative.
Libertarian or decentralized? Is crypto apolitical?
So my personal take is that eventually being against crypto will be like being against the internet. Like it's just a technology. It's not a thing. Yeah, that's just my opinion. Like I kind of can't see it becoming a political thing after a while.
I have to sneak in this question then, being against the internet. Sorry, it went away. I have to look because it's a good question. They move quickly. Well, basically it was saying, you're off the grid. Can only look at one Twitter account. What is your go-to?
Oh my God.
Not true?
That is a really, really, really difficult question. I frankly would probably have to pick one of the crypto publications, I guess. I don't know.
Are you off the grid? That's not an answer. Are you off the grid?
What do you mean off the grid? No, I'm like a little bit too addicted to my phone. Definitely not off the grid.
All right. What are your favorite publications that you go to for information and news yourself?
Crypto ones?
Yes.
Okay,
I think
assuming.
they mean that. Unless you want to talk about New York Times.
That is my hometown, or not hometown, but where my current, where I live. That's my paper. But for crypto publications, it's going to be a boring answer. It's CoinDesk, which is one of the oldest and most well-known crypto publications, in the block, which is also very well-known, and Decrypt. Like those three are kind of the main three publications. But there's other really good ones, like the Defiant is kind of more focused on DeFi and Ethereum and all things related to Ethereum. So I don't think they cover like Bitcoin very much, but Bitcoin Magazine is focused just on Bitcoin. There's honestly, you guys, there's so many good crypto publications, and you could check out my podcast too.
I will say that, as you can tell, I'm a newbie, so I did find your podcast very helpful.
Oh, good.
Even though we entered up here, but it was very accessible.
Oh, good. Yeah, I've had people say that on my survey, that I have a podcast where they know if they sent it to their friends who don't know anything about crypto, that their friends will be fine listening to it. So.
I'm going to give you some lightning round questions.
Okay.
Actually, some are a little more. How do you see your role as a journalist in dispelling FUD, that's fear,
Uncertainty and doubt.
And doubt, yeah. That often comes from mainstream coverage of this space.
I guess so you might know the tagline of my podcast is "You're no hype resource for all things crypto," and I just try to stick to the facts. And I frankly don't really pay attention when there's kind of crazy mainstream. I come from the mainstream media. Don't forget that. But
Forbes magazine, you couldn't be more mainstream.
yeah, it is very mainstream. But honestly, I actually feel like the mainstream publications are doing a really good job of covering crypto now compared to when I started in 2015. So they've just improved a lot.
I don't know about this. Thoughts, reflections on the recent government crackdown on the couple that stole $3.6 billion in Bitcoin?
Well, actually, I feel like the hack that the money that they were laundering stems from a hack in 2016. It was August 2016, and then the hack that my sources and I resolved for my book is from June 2016. And I feel like when you look at that, the takeaway is don't do illicit things in crypto because forensics is going to catch up to you and you'll get caught eventually. That's my takeaway.
Just going back to some things you said, favorite woman-led DAO?
Oh gosh, favorite woman-led DAO. I don't know which ones are women-led, but I guess the thing about a DAO is that generally they don't, because they're sort of more democratic, they might have like founders or something. So I don't know if she leads any DAOs, but I know that Chase Chapman is very active in all DAOs, and she basically makes her living just by working for DAOs. And she has her own podcast, and she's just involved in like a bunch of DAOs. And I'm actually going to have her on my show next week. So, so she's just kind of an interesting person to me.
What important institutions do you believe could benefit from blockchain the most?
Oh, wow, institutions. Well, hopefully none of my financial institutions will listen to this conversation, but I do actually really think that the potential for crypto to disrupt financial institutions would be, frankly, a good thing.
So we're talking the big banks, the big venture capital firms?
Probably more
governments?
like banks, actually. Yeah. We saw like a lot of bad behavior, and then they didn't get punished at all for any of that, and I don't know.
Given what we talked about, all the crime and greed and stuff that happened with crypto, and as it has emerged, what's the difference? So if crypto disrupts the banks, the financial institutions, how do we know that it will operate better?
Well, what's so fascinating about this community? Oh God, well, actually, yeah. I don't know if I can fully say this. Okay. So something that's very interesting about like open source and about these like public blockchains is that like the information is out there. And, the community calls out BS when they see it, which is like, I don't know, it's very interesting to watch. The only thing is that even though that happens, at the same time, you do get a lot of people that either are unaware of that happening, and so then they buy things like Dogecoin or SHIB, or I don't know, for people who know these are like these dog meme coins that they don't have a lot of kind of substance behind them, but they're just like these popular memes, and so a lot of people just buy them, and so it's kind of disheartening to see like, why would you put your money in those? But I don't know, maybe I'm like judgmental. I shouldn't be. But the point is that there's so many other projects that like raised a ton of money, but people called them out for just not having like real technology that was worth putting your money into, and people turned out to be right.
That's an interesting argument. We are in an era of incredible belief in false information in this country, in Russia,
Yes.
in Ukraine. Those are communities who are fomenting that false information. So I don't know, why should I trust any community?
Yeah, this is, so, okay. I've had a very interesting experience the last few days. So for those of you who follow me on Twitter, you might know.
One account.
Yes, my account. You might know that one of the people in the book is somebody named Charles Hoskinson, who created a coin called ADA, and it's part of a network called Cardano. And so in the book, you will find out that the people who lived and worked with him felt that he had a very tenuous relationship with reality and embellished a lot of things. And when I reported my book, I found out that some of the claims he had made about his education did not line up with the school's records. And so he tweeted that my book was a work of fiction, which I thought was very rich coming from somebody who was known for trying to convince people he was Satoshi Nakamoto. And so
Afghan war hero.
Yes, and that he, had done all these things in the war, and oh my God, it was like, you need to read the book because it's just crazy how many tall tales he told. But I tweeted at him, "Oh, hey, Charles, so here's all the times you said that you dropped out of a PhD program, but, I asked the schools, and they said that you were an undergrad, and you dropped out of undergrad." And what's fascinating is, these are the facts, right? Like he has said, I even released the audio clip of his interview with me where he said that he dropped out of the PhD program. And his supporters, they're like, even after all the evidence, I even screenshot the emails from the schools and I posted those. Despite all that, they're still tweeting at me that, I'm a tabloid journalist, that I set out to slander Charles. And I'm like, no, this is called fact checking. This is like basic journalism. But yeah, and then they say like, we don't care that he doesn't have a PhD. And I was like, I also do not care whether or not he has a PhD. I'm talking about lying. That is important to me. But anyway, so it's just fascinating. Like they just want to believe what they want to believe, and they want to think Cardano is going to go to the moon and whatever. And yeah, it's just weird. Like I'm just like, the facts could not be more clear that he has lied multiple times about this, and they really, they think that I'm an awful person. So it's very strange.
He's been very successful in terms of making money, right? That individual.
Yes, he definitely has more money than me. So, maybe telling the truth is not all it's cracked up to be. I don't know.
How is crypto innovating to address the environmental concerns of mining? And that's energy use, yes?
Yes. There's probably a lot of ways that this is happening, actually, which is fascinating to me because, so I used to cover environmental things, and when I started covering crypto, I was like, whoa, people in crypto do not care about environmental stuff. Like it was such a contrast to my previous, area that I covered. And now that so many normies are getting in through NFTs and stuff, suddenly I think the crypto world realizes like, oh, we have to address this issue. And so there have been actually a number of interesting proposals like Square and ARK Investment, Kathy Wood's group, they released a white paper showing how renewable energy sources tend to be far from the demand centers. And for that reason, a lot of those places have a hard time kind of keeping consistent revenue. And so they were saying that if you combine that with Bitcoin mining, then at the times when there's no demand for their excess energy, they can use that, because they're in places with plentiful wind and sun. They can use that energy when demand is low to mine Bitcoin or mine whatever, and then even out their revenue. And then when the grid does need their energy, then they can just shut down the miners because they don't, it's like you can just shut them off at will, and then they can provide energy at those times. And so it's to me, it's a very innovative idea, and I found it really interesting. I actually just did an interview that I released today on my premium offering. You have to be a subscriber and pay for that. but this was a group where they actually came out of oil and gas, and they were realizing, like, so for natural gas, I guess, like, you often have to flare the excess natural gas and you essentially waste it. But then they started putting Bitcoin miners on it, and so now they not only have their own Bitcoin mining operation, but then they now also will, put miners on other people's operations to kind of, put a use to that excess natural gas. And so that's kind of like their new business. They like basically left the oil and gas thing to do this combined Bitcoin and oil and gas operation. Yeah.
So it also indicates where governments could be sure to help people find opportunities, or at least stay out of the way,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
All right, more quick ones. Is stealing crypto, these are great questions. Is stealing crypto a crime? And if so, who can prosecute?
So this is a complicated question because it just depends on so many different facts and circumstances. Obviously there's probably very obvious cases where, yes, stealing, that would be a crime, such as, if you broke into my Coinbase account and stole my crypto out of there, like, that would probably be a clear one. I'm not a lawyer, by the way, so you should just know that I'm just going to use my own common sense to answer this, but I'm not drawing on some kind of legal background to answer these questions. But then, in the case of like the DAO hack, I do know that pretty much immediately afterward, the community was engaged in this very abstract discussion around whether or not the hack was actually a theft or not. And one of my favorite quotes about that from the book was, in one of the forums, people were saying, oh, well, the guy who stole my car knew more about wiring than I did, therefore it wasn't a theft. Just like pointing out the irony of saying that this hack wasn't a theft. So all these things were, very interesting. And then what was fascinating was like Vitalik, being this like very cerebral person, he like wrote a blog post, but he didn't even address the question of whether or not the hack was a theft. He just was like, this happens when there's a discrepancy between like how the contract performs and how it was intended to perform. And so we should just focus on making it so that there's no gap between those, which is just, there's just something very Vitalik about how he put that, but anyway.
True, right? I mean, isn't that what people
Yes.
went to do, make it more secure?
Yes, exactly.
What needs to happen to ensure greater diversity and inclusion in the crypto community as things continue to develop?
This is a very tough question because, my personal experience is that I understood racism when I was 5. Like day 1 of kindergarten, I knew what racism was. I feel like I didn't really, truly get sexism until I was 35, and I'm a woman. So like there's something just so ingrained in our society about sexism. It's like very, 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 very difficult to detect, even if you're a woman. And I noticed this like on my Twitter, like if people make racist comments towards me, like everybody notices it and calls it out right away. The sexist comments, no, they're in denial. They're like, does not exist. They're like, women just aren't interested. There are no barriers to crypto, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh my God, we would have to go back so far in just the way everybody's been socialized since we were babies to like really resolve this issue. So, I know that's not super helpful for answering this question, but I think, part of it is just having, one thing that I hope will happen with my book is like, because it's a story, I hope that more people that are not in crypto will like learn about it just because they are interested in the story. I do know that my personal friends who are mostly women did early reads of the book and gave me their input and came away understanding it, understanding crypto, I mean. So I feel like NFTs kind of go a long way to that because they're, more like cultural objects and, like one of the co-founders of Coinbase tweeted when the NFT thing really got going, he was like, oh, it turns out more people are interested in culture than in money, which is like so true. And I feel like that's another way to kind of get more women and just like underrepresented communities into crypto. And I think it's turning out that way, actually, because I've been noticing, like Gwyneth Paltrow and Reese Witherspoon and Mindy Kaling and like just all these female celebrities, or Mila Kunis, they're all getting into crypto, but it's through NFTs. So I feel like hopefully as crypto grows, then we'll start to see more diversity.
You say that sexism hit you as you started to cover this community, or was it previous to that?
Oh, no, it was like an unrelated thing that made me realize that. But I've had like certain sexist things happen to me. But honestly, I feel like I've been shielded from it like way more than an average woman in this space, just because, when I started covering this, especially in 2015, if you're going to call up what was then a Bitcoin or blockchain founder and say you were going to write about them for Forbes, like they're not going to treat you poorly, especially at that time, because like nobody cared about crypto at all. So the fact that I was paying any attention and I was from a mainstream media outlet, that helped me a lot. It definitely didn't like inoculate me from, or shield me from that, because definitely there were certain people who, even though they had never been a journalist for a single hour of their lives, would try to tell me how to do my job. And I was like, do you know I've been doing this for 20 years? So there were things like that. But by and large, I really think I've had a way better experience than most other women because of, the role that I have.
What's been the biggest change in the crypto landscape since your book came out?
Oh, well, it only came out 2 weeks ago, so it's probably the Russia.
Moves fast. This landscape moves fast.
Yeah, well, it's 2018. Okay, well, so if we restrict it to the last 2 weeks, though, the Russia-Ukraine thing, like having Ukraine solicit money via, that's historic. But since 2018, it's either got to be, it's probably NFTs, but close second place, I would say, is just this regulatory story and how like that fight with the infrastructure bill last summer, like Congress was like, what just happened? Because so basically the backstory is that there was this provision in the infrastructure bill about crypto, and it was very poorly worded. And the crypto community was up in arms because it was like basically not really workable, like the way it was worded. It just wasn't even going to be possible to comply with. And the crypto community flooded Congress with like 40,000 calls in a few days, and this never happens. And Congress was just like, what is going on? And some of the lobbyists were saying that people were calling them and being like, how did you do that? And they were like, it's just the crypto community. They didn't have to do that much, So yeah, that's probably another big one. I think Congress then realized, oh, we need to understand this. And that's why we saw in the fall at some of the hearings, just the level of the discourse was so much kind of more sophisticated than previously, because I think they got educated.
For someone getting into Web3 as a career, what's the most promising area to get into? Wallets, exchanges, et cetera?
Oh, wow. I don't think you can pick one. It's really,
Those are all interesting.
Between wallets and exchanges, I would probably go with exchanges. There's a reason why Coinbase is like the first major U.S. company to go public. They make a killing basically off their exchange, but I don't think any of the wallet companies are making anywhere near as much as Coinbase. So,
how did the process of writing this book change you?
Honestly, through writing the book, I became a lot nicer to myself. Yeah, I know, it's an interesting story. So, okay. So I had a lot of other stuff going on in my life. So people who listen to my show will know that I'm really into meditation, but I got even more into meditation when I was working on the book. And when you're working kind of in your head all day on your book, but also then you're meditating a lot. And meditation, makes you aware of your mind, right? And at one point I suddenly realized when I'm working on the book, if I, also just to give context, writing this book is it's the most it's been the most important thing to me for like very long. You know, I've wanted to write a book ever since I was a little girl, and like, it just was very important to me. I wanted to do a really good job. And I realized that, and this again is because I was meditating so much, and I was able to observe my mind better than I had previously. I realized that anytime I made a slight perceived mistake with the book, even if it's something as small as like phrasing a question not exactly the perfect way to a source during an interview, I would make myself feel so bad about it internally that like I wouldn't even be able to work on the book for a few days. Like I just would mentally berate myself like for not doing it perfectly. And then, yeah, because I was meditating so much, I suddenly realized this. But I'd been doing it the whole time I'd been working on the book. Like I must have been doing that for years. And then all of a sudden I just realized like, oh my God, why am I doing that? And I was like, that's so stupid and crazy. And so I just like completely stopped. And like now I'm just very nice to myself all day long, and I like don't ever make myself feel bad about anything. And but yeah, I just have to say, if you have any kind of bad habit and you want to get rid of it, meditate, because it just makes you so aware of your mind and like your own bad habits. And I don't know, I love meditating now, and I don't know, it just brings like so much goodness to my life, but that was definitely one of them. So
That's great. All right, it's the opposite of an NFT because there's many copies over there, but books for sale.
yes, and I will sign them for you too.
And thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. This is fun.
It didn't do much.